Listen closely, my friends. Negative thinking doesn't destroy your life overnight. It destroys it one thought at a time, so quietly that most people never realize it's happening. One sentence today, another tomorrow, 100 more next month, until one day you wake up living a life that was built more by fear than by truth. The most dangerous negative thought is never the loudest one. It's the one that sounds reasonable, the one that says, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe it's already too late. Maybe this is just who I am. And because it sounds calm, you stop questioning it. You start believing it. Here's what almost nobody understands. Your mind doesn't care whether a thought is true or false. It only cares whether you repeat it enough. Repeat a lie for years, and your brain begins treating it like reality. That is how confidence dies. That is how dreams disappear. That is how ordinary people spend their entire lives fighting battles that never actually existed. But 2,000 years ago, the Stoics discovered something extraordinary. They realized that negative thoughts are not commands. They are not prophecies. They are not reality. They are only mental visitors, and every visitor must earn the right to stay. That single realization gave slaves the strength to remain free, emperors the discipline to remain calm, and ordinary men the courage to survive extraordinary suffering. In this video, you'll discover 7 Stoic laws that will help you destroy negative thinking at its source. You'll learn why your mind keeps creating these thoughts, how to stop believing every sentence it whispers, and how to build a mindset so strong that fear, doubt, and overthinking lose their control over you. Every law builds on the previous one, so stay until the very end, because the final law is where everything comes together. Let's begin. Rule 1. The thought is not the enemy. The biggest mistake most people make is believing that every thought inside their mind is telling them the truth. It isn't. Your mind produces thousands of thoughts every single day. Some are useful, some are meaningless, and some are nothing more than fear wearing the mask of certainty. Yet most people never stop to ask which one is which. They believe the thought the moment it appears, and that single mistake quietly changes the course of their entire life. Imagine someone knocking on the door of your house. Would you invite them inside without asking who they are? Would you hand them the keys to your home without knowing their intentions? Of course not. Yet every single day you do exactly that with your mind. A thought arrives saying, "You're not good enough." You don't question it. You don't challenge it. You simply let it move in until it starts living there permanently. This is exactly what Epictetus understood more than 2,000 years ago. Before he became one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, he lived as a slave. His body belonged to someone else, but he refused to let his mind belong to anyone. He discovered a truth that still separates mentally strong people from everyone else. A thought is only a visitor. It is not a command. It is not a prophecy. It is not reality. It only becomes powerful the moment you stop observing it and start identifying with it. That is where suffering begins. Not when the thought appears, but when you decide that the thought must be true, simply because it came from your own mind. Think about the negative thought that visits you most often. I'm falling behind. I'm going to fail. Everyone else has figured life out, except me. Now ask yourself one simple question. Where is the evidence? Not the feeling, not the fear, the evidence. Most negative thoughts collapse the moment you force them to answer that question. They survive because they are never examined. They hide in the dark, repeating themselves until repetition starts looking like truth. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline every single day while carrying the weight of an empire on his shoulders. Wars surrounded him, disease surrounded him, death surrounded him. Yet he constantly reminded himself that peace does not begin by controlling the world outside. It begins by refusing to surrender the world inside. This is your first discipline. From this moment forward, never believe a thought simply because it sounds convincing. Every negative thought must earn your belief. Stop it at the gate. Question it. Examine it. Demand evidence before giving it permission to stay. Because the moment you stop believing every thought your mind creates, you take back a power you never realized you had. But catching a negative thought is only the beginning. Even after you recognize that it is lying, it will still try to convince you. So the next question becomes, how do you destroy a negative thought before it becomes your identity? That is exactly what the second law is about. Rule 2. Put every negative thought on trial. The moment you notice a negative thought, don't fight it. Question it. Most people either believe their thoughts immediately or try to suppress them. Both reactions give the thought more power. The Stoics chose a different path. They became investigators instead of victims. They refused to accept any thought until it had proven itself with facts rather than feelings. Your mind has a strange habit. It speaks in absolutes. It says, I always fail. Nothing ever works out for me. I'll never be good enough. But pay attention to those words. Always, never, everyone, no one. These are not facts. They are exaggerations created by fear to make temporary pain feel permanent. Imagine standing in a courtroom. A witness walks in, makes a serious accusation, but brings no evidence, no documents, no proof, no witnesses. Would any fair judge accept that testimony? Of course not. Yet every single day people sentence themselves to a lifetime of self-doubt based on thoughts that have never presented a single piece of evidence. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that the mind becomes whatever it repeatedly agrees with. That is why he questioned his first reaction before accepting it as truth. He understood that emotions can be honest, but they are not always accurate. Feeling afraid does not mean you are in danger. Feeling like a failure does not mean you have failed at life. The next time your mind whispers, "You're not capable," stop and ask one question. What evidence supports this? Then ask an even more powerful question. What evidence proves the opposite? You will often discover moments you forgot, challenges you overcame, victories you never gave yourself credit for. Your negative mind remembers every mistake, but conveniently forgets every success. That is why you must train yourself to remember the whole truth instead of only the painful parts. The Stoics never taught people to lie to themselves with fake positivity. They taught something far more powerful. Replace exaggeration with accuracy. Instead of saying, "I always fail," say, "I failed this time, but I've succeeded before." Instead of saying, "I'm not strong enough," say, "I haven't mastered this yet." Truth weakens fear, because fear survives by distorting reality. From today onward, every negative thought must face the same trial. Bring your evidence. Prove your claim. If it cannot survive your questions, it does not deserve your belief. And the more often you practice this discipline, the quieter that negative voice becomes, until one day it no longer controls your decisions. But even after you stop believing negative thoughts, one dangerous question still remains. Where do those thoughts keep coming from in the first place? That is exactly what the third law will reveal. Rule 3. Guard what enters your mind. Every negative thought has a beginning. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. It is planted, watered, and repeated until one day it feels like your own belief. Long before a negative thought becomes your identity, it first enters your mind as something small, a conversation, a memory, a comparison, a headline, a criticism, or a single careless sentence. What you repeatedly allow into your mind eventually decides what comes out of it. Most people spend hours protecting their money, their reputation, and their homes. Yet they leave the door of their mind completely unguarded. They consume endless negativity, compare their lives to carefully edited versions of strangers, replay old failures before going to sleep, and surround themselves with voices that constantly remind them of what they lack. Then they wonder why peace feels impossible to find. The Stoics understood a truth that modern life makes incredibly easy to forget. Your mind cannot grow strong if you keep feeding it weakness. Just as the body becomes a reflection of what it repeatedly consumes, the mind becomes a reflection of the ideas, conversations, and emotions it absorbs every single day. Every piece of mental food either strengthens your character or quietly weakens it. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. What has your mind been consuming lately? Have you been feeding it fear disguised as entertainment, comparison disguised as motivation, negativity disguised as realism? If the answer is yes, then don't be surprised when your inner voice begins speaking the same language. Your thoughts are often nothing more than echoes of what you repeatedly expose yourself to. Musonius Rufus, one of the greatest Stoic teachers, believed that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of what you practice daily. He knew that discipline isn't built during extraordinary moments. It is built through ordinary choices, repeated over and over again. Every day you are training your mind, whether you realize it or not. Imagine planting poisonous seeds in a garden every morning. Would you expect flowers to bloom? Of course not. Then why expect confidence to grow while your mind is constantly watered with doubt, resentment, fear, and endless comparison? The harvest can never be different from the seeds you choose to plant. Your thoughts tomorrow are being planted by the habits you repeat today. This is why mentally strong people become extremely selective. They protect what they read. They protect what they watch. They protect who they spend time with. Most importantly, they protect the conversations they have with themselves. They understand that every repeated message becomes another brick in the foundation of their character. Brick by brick, day after day, they build a mind that no longer collapses under pressure. From this moment on, become the gatekeeper of your own mind. If something repeatedly fills you with fear without making you wiser, question it. If someone constantly feeds your doubts instead of your growth, create distance. If your own inner voice keeps repeating the same destructive story, stop giving it an audience. Every thought you entertain is casting a vote for the person you will eventually become. But even after you guard your mind, another challenge remains. Life will still bring pain. People will still disappoint you. Plans will still fall apart. You cannot control everything that happens to you. The question is, how do you remain unshaken when life refuses to go your way? That is the lesson hidden inside the fourth law. Rule 4. Stop fighting what you cannot control. There is a reason negative thinking refuses to leave. It survives because your mind keeps fighting battles it was never meant to win. You replay conversations that already ended. You argue with yesterday. You fear tomorrow. You exhaust yourself trying to control people, outcomes, and circumstances that have never belonged to you. And while you're busy chasing control over the uncontrollable, you quietly lose control over the only thing that was ever yours, your own mind. This is where most people spend their entire lives trapped. They believe peace will come when life finally becomes fair. when people understand them, when success arrives, when nothing goes wrong. But life has never made that promise. It never will. The person who waits for perfect circumstances is waiting for a day that does not exist. Epictetus built his entire philosophy around one life-changing realization. Some things are within your control. Most things are not. Your thoughts, your choices, your discipline, your character, these belong to you. Other people's opinions, unexpected failures, betrayal, illness, time, and the future, they never did. The moment you confuse these two worlds, anxiety is born, because you begin demanding certainty from a world that has never offered it. Think about how much energy you waste every week, worrying about what someone thinks of you, replaying an embarrassing moment that no one else even remembers, imagining disasters that never happen, trying to force people to become who you want them to be. But every minute spent fighting reality is a minute stolen from building yourself. Marcus Aurelius woke up every morning knowing that people would disappoint him, plans would fail, problems would appear without warning. Yet instead of resisting reality, he prepared his mind for it. That preparation became his strength. He understood that suffering grows larger the moment we begin arguing with facts we cannot change. Imagine standing in the middle of a violent storm. You scream at the wind to stop. You order the rain to disappear. You curse the sky because it refuses to obey you. The storm doesn't hear your anger. It simply continues. The only person being destroyed is the one refusing to accept the weather. Life works exactly the same way. Reality never changes because you resist it. Only your peace disappears. Acceptance does not mean weakness. It does not mean giving up. It means seeing reality exactly as it is, so you can respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. The Stoics never surrendered to life. They surrendered their illusion of control, and in doing so, they became impossible to break, because no external event had the power to dictate their inner world. From this day forward, ask yourself one question whenever anxiety appears. Is this within my control? If the answer is yes, act with courage. If the answer is no, release it with dignity. That single habit will save you years of unnecessary suffering and return an extraordinary amount of mental freedom. But even after you stop fighting what you cannot control, one invisible enemy still remains: the past. Because nothing feeds negative thinking more than memories you refuse to let go of. Rule 5. Let the past teach you, not define you. There is one place where negative thinking becomes almost impossible to escape: the past. Not because the past still has power, but because your mind keeps giving it power. Every painful memory, every mistake, every betrayal, every moment of regret is replayed so many times that eventually it stops feeling like something that happened to you. It starts feeling like who you are. Your mind has a dangerous habit. It mistakes repetition for truth. The more often you replay your worst moments, the more your brain begins to believe those moments represent your entire life. One failure becomes, I'm a failure. One rejection becomes, nobody will ever choose me. One broken relationship becomes, I'll never be loved again. A single chapter slowly rewrites the entire story. This is why so many people remain prisoners of events that ended years ago. The people who hurt them have moved on. The opportunity they lost has already disappeared. The mistake has finished teaching its lesson. But inside their own mind, they continue serving a life sentence for a crime that no longer exists. Every morning begins with yesterday. Every tomorrow is judged by memories that can never be changed. Seneca warned against this long before modern psychology ever explained it. He believed that suffering becomes unbearable when we refuse to separate the event from the meaning we attach to it. The event may last a single day, but the meaning can imprison a person for decades. It is rarely the wound that destroys us. It is the story we continue telling ourselves about the wound. Imagine carrying a heavy stone everywhere you go. At first, someone else places it in your hands, but years pass, and they are gone. Still, you refuse to put the stone down. Eventually, you forget that it was never chained to you. You become so accustomed to its weight that carrying it begins to feel normal. That is exactly what unresolved regret does. The burden stops being imposed by life and starts being chosen by habit. Marcus Aurelius never asked himself why painful things had happened. He asked what those experiences were trying to teach him. Every hardship became training. Every disappointment became discipline. Every loss became a reminder that character is built by what survives after comfort disappears. He refused to waste suffering by turning it into self-pity. So ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Are you remembering your past, or are you rehearsing it? Because those are two completely different things. Remembering gives you wisdom. Rehearsing gives you pain. Wisdom helps you move forward. Pain keeps you standing in the same place while life quietly passes you by. The Stoics believed that every experience leaves you with two choices. You can carry the wound, or you can carry the lesson. You cannot carry both forever. The moment you choose the lesson, the wound begins to lose its authority. Your past no longer becomes a prison. It becomes proof that you survived what you once believed would destroy you. From today onward, stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead ask, "What is this trying to make me become?" That single question transforms regret into growth, pain into wisdom, and memory into strength. Rule 6. Master the voice inside your head. There is a conversation happening inside your mind every single day. No one else can hear it. No one else can interrupt it. Yet that silent conversation has more influence over your future than any speech you'll ever hear, any book you'll ever read, or any advice you'll ever receive. Because in the end, you don't become what other people say about you. You become what you repeatedly say about yourself. Listen carefully to your inner voice. Not when you're succeeding, when you make a mistake, when you fail, when no one is watching. That is when its true personality is revealed. For most people, it is unbelievably cruel. It says things they would never dare say to another human being. You're useless. You'll never change. Why even try? And because that voice comes from within, they mistake it for honesty instead of recognizing it as years of unchallenged conditioning. Think about this for a moment. If a stranger followed you every day and spoke to you the same way your inner voice does, you would leave immediately. You would call that person abusive. You would never allow them to stay in your life. Yet because those words come from your own mind, you accept them without protest. Day after day, year after year, until criticism becomes your normal way of thinking. The Stoics understood something extraordinary. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your inner dialogue. Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts in private journals, not because he needed to impress anyone, but because he understood that the mind must be guided every day. If you do not consciously shape your inner voice, your fears will shape it for you. But there is something even more dangerous than negative self-talk. It is believing that the voice inside your head is your identity. It isn't. You are the one listening to that voice, which means you are not the voice itself. The moment you recognize this distinction, everything changes. You stop becoming a prisoner of every passing thought. You become the observer, the one with the power to accept, reject, or replace what the mind is saying. Imagine sitting beside a river. Leaves float past on the surface. Some are beautiful, some are broken, some disappear within seconds. Would you jump into the river and chase every single leaf? Of course not. Thoughts are exactly the same. They appear, they pass, and they disappear, unless you choose to grab one and carry it with you. Most suffering begins the moment you hold on to a thought that was meant to keep moving. From this moment forward, become the author of your inner dialogue. When your mind says, "I can't," answer with, "I haven't mastered it yet." When it says, "I'm not enough," answer with, "I am still becoming." When it says, "This is the end," remind yourself, this is only a chapter. You are not denying reality. You are refusing to let fear write the story of your life. Remember this truth. Your mind is always listening to the words you repeat. Every sentence becomes another brick in the foundation of your identity. Repeat weakness long enough, and weakness becomes familiar. Repeat courage long enough, and courage becomes your nature. The life you live tomorrow is being written by the conversations you have with yourself today. Rule 7. Become the master of your mind. There comes a moment when negative thinking loses its power, not because life suddenly becomes easier, not because pain disappears, not because every problem is solved. It loses its power because you are no longer the same person who once believed every fearful thought. The battle changes the moment your mind realizes that you are no longer willing to obey it without question. This is the final lesson the Stoics wanted every person to understand. Freedom is never something the world gives you. It is something you build inside yourself. A man can possess wealth, status, admiration, and influence, yet remain a slave to his own fears. Another can lose everything, stand completely alone, and still remain free because nothing outside him has the power to rule what is happening within. Look back at every law you have learned. You stood at the gate instead of believing every thought. You questioned fear instead of surrendering to it. You became careful about what entered your mind. You stopped fighting what was never yours to control. You refused to let yesterday define tomorrow. You transformed your inner voice from an enemy into a guide. None of these habits seem extraordinary on their own, but together they build something almost impossible to break: a disciplined mind. And once the mind becomes disciplined, negative thinking no longer controls your choices. It may still knock on the door. It may still whisper during difficult moments. But it no longer decides who you are. The voice is still there. Only now it no longer has authority. Marcus Aurelius once lived surrounded by war, disease, betrayal, and uncertainty. Yet he wrote something remarkable to himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That wasn't written for philosophers. It was written for ordinary people facing ordinary struggles, for moments exactly like yours, because strength is not something you discover one day. It is something you practice every single time you refuse to let fear make your decisions. So from this day forward, watch your thoughts, question your fears, protect your mind, accept reality, learn from your past, choose your inner voice wisely. Then repeat those disciplines tomorrow and the day after that until they become part of who you are. Because character is never built in one life-changing moment. It is built through thousands of invisible decisions that no one else will ever see. One day you'll wake up and notice something extraordinary. The same situations that once filled you with anxiety no longer shake you. The same criticism that once destroyed your confidence no longer defines your worth. The same negative thoughts still appear, but now they leave as quickly as they came, not because the world changed, because you changed, and that is the greatest victory Stoicism can ever offer. Not a life without pain, not a life without failure, but a mind that refuses to surrender to either. Remember, the quality of your life will never rise above the quality of your thoughts. Master your thoughts, and you will begin to master your life. Take a moment. Think about the person you were before this video began. The person who believed every negative thought. The person who allowed fear to make decisions. If you've truly understood these 7 Stoic laws, that version of you no longer has to exist. Remember what you've learned today. A thought is not the truth. Fear is not a prophecy. Your past is not your identity. Other people's opinions are not your destiny. And the voice inside your head is not your master unless you choose to obey it. The moment you stop giving negative thoughts unquestioned authority, you begin taking your life back. But never forget this. Reading these principles will not change you. Watching this video will not change you. Even understanding every word you've heard today will not change you. Only practice has that power. Every morning you will be given a choice, to believe fear or to question it, to repeat old excuses, or to take one courageous step forward, to remain the same, or to become someone your negative thoughts can no longer control. That choice will never be made once. It will be made every single day for the rest of your life. The Stoics didn't become mentally unbreakable because life was kind to them. They became unbreakable because they trained their minds long before life tested them. And one day, when the storms finally came, they discovered something extraordinary. The strongest person is not the one who never feels fear. It is the one who refuses to surrender to it. So from this moment on, guard your mind, choose your thoughts carefully, act with courage even when confidence is absent. And remember, every time you refuse to obey a negative thought, you become a little stronger than you were yesterday. Because in the end, the greatest victory is not defeating the world. The greatest victory is mastering your own mind. If this video changed the way you think, let it become the beginning of the way you live. And if you found value in these lessons, make sure to subscribe and join us for more timeless wisdom from Stoicism that can transform the way you face life. Until next time, protect your mind, master your thoughts, and master your life.